When this started, I confess I did not understand. I guess maybe that's how it all turned out to be such a mess.
You a teacher? Got emotions? Got a lot of emotions that overwhelm you, that threaten to burn you out? Good, because this podcast is about transforming those emotions. The emotions that come with teaching, no matter how talented, experienced, or mature you are. Because classrooms these days can be such a mess, worse than you've ever seen before. We're tempted to treat the emotions that go with such messes as problems, feelings to ignore or numb out or rail against or blame ourselves for having. Wrong. These emotions are pure gold, if you know how to read them and transform them into wisdom and focused, effective action. Think of this as the teacher's lounge you have wanted and deserved your entire teaching life. Join my co-host, Joe, and me to hear stories about and interviews with teachers who thought nothing would ever change, but when they learned how to teach through their emotions, discovered just how easy change can be. In fact, it's amazing. Welcome to Teaching Through Emotions. I'm Betsy Burris. Let's get started. So today is an interview day. I'm really excited to welcome a good and old friend, Sarah Becker, to Teaching Through Emotions. I met Sarah when I was working at Bennington College and she was working at the Early Childhood Center. I worked a little bit with Sarah at the Williams College Children's Center before she retired from there. And I just want to say, Sarah, you are such a thoughtful, accomplished, and expert teacher and thinker about early childhood education. And I've always thought early childhood educators have a hell of a lot to teach every teacher at all levels, including college. That's where I really wanted to bring you. When you were at the Children's Center at Williams College, I wanted you to talk to professors because I thought you might have a lot to teach them. But this is my chance to get you to be able to talk to everybody, professors and other teachers included. So welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here and good to dive into thinking about young children again and teaching. And I have to say also that you bring so much to teachers, and your work with me personally and with the staff at Williams was just phenomenal. You brought us so much.
It's such a pleasure to work with teachers, especially absorbent and caring teachers like you guys were. So Sarah, I want to start with your background and specifically what brought you to early childhood education.
Well, I was thinking about this and I thought, it's really about 3 young children. One of them was my sister, who was born when I was 9 years old, and she was 7 years after my younger brother. So I spent a lot of time with her, and she was a vibrant little person and funny and quirky, and there was a lot of caring going on for her, but just a lot of laughter. And then I spent the summer after my junior year in high school in Uganda as an exchange student. I stayed with an African family in Kampala. The 2 older children were away at school, so I spent a lot of time with a 3-year-old little boy. We didn't speak each other's language at all, but we spent a lot of time enjoying each other. Then, in high school, I started to think about, there's got to be something different about education. This high school thing's not so good. So I went off to college, and one of the early years I worked at a play center, and there was a little boy that I spent a lot of time with, and I started to really key into his thinking, noticing things about the way he thought. And like one day, I had a beaded shirt on, beads all over, and he said, "How do they go on?" And I said, "Well, they're little beads and you sew them on the shirt." And he's looking up and he goes, "No, how do they go on? Like lights." And that made me realize there's more than one way to look at things if you really listen to children. So my career has been not teaching babies, but being a director with infants in the center. And I taught children from the age of 3 up to 14 in different settings. I was a creative movement teacher. I taught in a progressive independent school, the older age level of those. and then as a pre-K and kindergarten teacher, and then as a child care director. Now I'm doing a lot of things with nature in the local forest, one with children.
Can you describe, progressive education, maybe everyone who's listening to this knows what it is, but just specifically, could you talk about the prospect approach just briefly to education? Because that's a really, I think, paradigmatic progressive approach, yes?
Yeah. The Prospect Center was based on really getting to know children by observing them and listening to them and developing curriculum from children's interests and their strengths. So it was an emergent curriculum project-based place and mixed ages. The Highland Hall, there was just a younger group and then there was an older group.
Love it. So just want to reiterate that the kind of progressive approach to education that you were steeped in expected teachers to do what you did with the kids that you worked with, those three, really influential children, to observe, to try to understand. And there's even protocols to actually dive really deep into artifacts that children have created, like drawings or writing.
Looking at children's work, thinking about teacher practice a lot, what you bring to your practice, directions you want to go, and the group of teachers helping you to think about that.
That's so fantastic. And I also want to underline that term emergent curriculum for people who don't know. Emergent meaning emerging out of. Can you say a little bit about that too?
Emergent curriculum is certainly key to it. And it comes from being with children, not sitting away from them, but really being right in there with them and circulating through different activities that children are doing and noticing, deeply noticing and listening to what it is that they're talking about. They have, in this case, open-ended materials to work with. And so what were they building or making and returning to work over time? My daughter wrote a novel in the school for the whole year at the age of 9, really trying to look at that and see what pieces you can pull out, not only for individual children to pursue, but for the group to form a group study.
It's just so perfectly student-centered.
Yeah.
It's education that is so student-centered that there's really nothing else. The curriculum does emerge from the students themselves. And I hope we get into this later, but these questions of assessment and how can we be sure that students are learning what we need them to learn, that this is part of the difficulty of progressive education or student-centered education, where you can't standardize. You have to be really creative about describing what students are learning. You have to be holistic. You have to recognize that there are bodies involved and not just brains. And that's just not where our education system is at all, and has been. I love this approach. I think it's the approach that is student-centered, however that might work. This is why I love the work that you've done in early childhood education, because it's crucial. It's not easy or obvious, but it actually activates teachers in ways that they are meant to be activated. That is, as caring, observant, intelligent human beings who want to connect with the students that they're actually helping to develop. It's very developmentally oriented. So can you tell, after all this now, what are the basic tenets of early childhood education as far as you're concerned?
Well, I was trying to think, is it the curriculum? Is it the room? Is it the relationships?
Right.
And I finally, in the middle of the last night, I said, no, it is the children first.
Children first.
So children come into your classroom and they bring who they are and their ways of thinking and their interests in their families and their cultural backgrounds and their languages and all of that. So first and foremost, you're paying attention to who they are and how they're speaking to you. And in early childhood, you're also caring for them through the day. It's not just the 3-hour preschool anymore. If you have this interest in paying attention to who they are as thinkers, making the assumption that they are competent thinkers and have their own voices to give to whatever's going on. In order to bring that out, one of the things is to give them an environment that they can play in and work in and learn in. That's an open-ended environment, but still structured. You've got the block area and you've got the sensory table and art materials readily available to children. and we've got tables to work at and an outdoor place. So there you are, and you're giving children the next piece, which is to play in that environment. Play is what children do. And if we left children completely alone in the world, they would learn about the world through their play, and they would learn about each other through their play. I was rereading a quote from Vivian Paley, who wrote about you can't say you can't play in a child's work and things like that. Books. And she was talking about how when children play, it's a way for them to recognize as they're doing something in their play that, oh, that's my idea there. So it kind of pulls up their thinking as they're playing. So, you have to have time to play. You have to get through this piece of time and then you do the next thing. And good early childhood programs still have structure and time frames, but they're more fluid. And they allow children and teachers to dwell together in time as they're engaged in play and activities and whatever learning, rather than gotta move on. So then children are also learning through their senses as they're playing. And it's not just that they're hearing, they're seeing, and they're touching, but they have sensory experiences. And they put into their learning and their products and their processes what it is that the senses are speaking to them. So an example of that was I used to work with children, giving them opportunities to do what I called long projects. And a little boy was hosting a musical group from the country of Tula, which is near Mongolia, and they do throat singing. And he was really fascinated by these singers and went to their concerts, and our class went to the concerts on the college campus. So when it came time to do his lawn project, I said, so what are you thinking? What would you like to work on? I want to do something about Tula. And I was like, And I knew that in older times in Tuva that people built yurts. And so he built a yurt out of felt and cardboard structure and grapevine structure over the top of it. And he figured out how to design the felt around the cylinder that this circular house had made. And he figured out how to wrap and sew the roof onto the whole thing. He figured out, even with his family, how to light it from inside with a little battery piece. When we showed work to the parents, I had each child write a sentence about what it was that they had done. He said, I can hear the music singing inside. Children use their senses to know and to feel in their hearts. And so part of it is looking not just about what they're capable of or what their interest is or what their concerns are, but how they speak of their hearts. So in all this play, lots is going on with relationships. There's children who are playing by themselves or they're playing near somebody and an idea sparks up, or another child is observing what it is that another kid is doing and getting ideas. And so often teachers say, do your own work. Don't copy anybody else. But kids get ideas from each other. So I said, it's okay to use other people's ideas because you're going to learn something from that person's ideas. There's somebody who knows how to do something that another child doesn't know how to do. And so they learn from each other. And there's talk. In an early childhood classroom, there's lots of talk and laughter. And occasional screaming and anger.
Sure, relationships.
Relationships. And there's leadership that comes forward, and it may be the kid is the leader in one certain kind of way, like he's the most outgoing or he has the biggest ideas. But there's also a leadership happening by children who are present to each other, and their presence helps others be present to each other. And so in that conflict that also definitely arises, teachers are also in this space. And it can be an inclination of adults to solve the problem. But often early childhood teachers will narrate for children what's going on. Oh, look, I see she's coming over to use that block. I wonder what she's doing with it. Yep, she's got it. And look at how you have enough to share. So that narration helps children to be aware of each other when they're not aware, and so that they're not surprised when a kid comes around and suddenly takes that block. But also teachers are there to help children just talk through what's going on if there's been a little uproar.
So much wonderful stuff. And I want to start with this narration, which I think is so important at this early level, at these early ages. And I'm just going to throw out a term that is from my field, psychoanalysis, psychodynamics, mentalization, which is the ability to predict or guess what's going on in somebody else's head. Right? Which is absolutely crucial, given that we can never know what's going on in anybody's head. And even if we ask them, which is also a good skill, that doesn't mean that they're going to tell us the truth or that they themselves even know. So mentalizing is the ability to imagine what might be happening inside somebody else. And that is a socially adaptive skill, and it actually is one that's missing in a lot of dire mental health diagnoses, that you guys, by narrating, oh, look, it's so-and-so, and look, you have enough. And they're using that block because they want to do X, Y, and Z, or let's ask them why right? I want to underline that narrating is crucial for everyone, and we do it to ourselves in our own minds. And it's interesting to consider when narration drops out, when maybe we should bring it back in. Just thinking when it might be useful for them to narrate, when they're watching something that they don't get or that their students aren't getting at whatever level, narrating something that comes so naturally to people like you working with little children, how valuable that can be for big children too, and adults even.
Yeah. If you have a teacher who's not at the desk or at the table, but is instead moving around the classroom and noticing students' body language and pauses and facial expressions, a teacher can go up and say to them, I see you're really trying to puzzle this out, and I'm wondering what you're thinking.
Yes.
Where are you stuck? So that it's not like, do your work. You're supposed to do this. Get to work. That simple act of anybody noticing how the person's body looks, how their faces look.
Another crucial skill for adults and teachers that is developmentally essential is what we call in my field mirroring, which is what you're describing. Looking and seeing and then mirroring back. It looks like you're not sure what to do next, or it looks like you're thinking, asking questions, but also making statements like, it seems like you might be stuck because whatever, there are no more red blocks and you've got a pattern going or whatever. Right. Even at that level, especially offering the language, as you mentioned, language is super, the words that we use. But again, that can also be valuable at any level. It seems like you might be stuck here. And I love what you said, Sarah, about trusting that these, I call them organisms. I call us organisms. Okay. That as human beings, we're actually really logical organisms. Nothing that we do isn't logical. It's not, right? It's all about surviving, however we've learned how to survive. And for a teacher to be wondering why you're surviving right now that way, making guesses about why, is really fantastic. It's what you described. Being present is really crucial. Dwelling with people while they're indicating that they're not being predictable or conforming to what we expect. Being curious about why that might be, and trusting that there's a good reason for it.
Yeah.
And then developing a relationship you can actually depend on to get all that learning happening, to get that self-awareness to happen in the kid, to get the reflective capacity going, to get mentalization happening. I mean, it does take presence and dwelling and bodies moving about together and apart. I mean, it reminds me of another concept called being alone in the presence of mother. This is from D.W. Winnicott, whom I love. But I translate it to being alone in the presence of another. Like, it's nice to be alone knowing that someone's there watching or just doing their thing, but available for you to touch back to. Yes.
Caring about what you're doing and paying attention.
And caring about what they're doing too, which I love about being alone in the presence of, say, mother. Mother might be doing her thing.
Right.
But it's not the same. I mean, a teacher might be talking to another kid or on the other side of the room. But that sense of safety and security, being in the presence of you, knowing that you will come around, or if you're needed, that, any child can go get you. It's this lovely world of safety, kind of magical safety that you're describing, at least in my mind.
Yeah. Exactly.
I also just want to say that, you mentioned relationships. And of course, that's the thing I think is crucial to all education, the fundament of education. Even though kids can play by themselves, they're still social beings. Why would we insist that kids stay siloed and isolated from each other?
Right.
The only way we actually can know anything is if it's only in our own bodies. It's kind of crazy making to me to think that we can know in isolation.
Right. I used to think of it as a group of children is more than the sum of the individual parts.
Love it.
I think early childhood gives lots of opportunity for kids to go down a little road and explore and play. And then they're playing with various individuals in the classroom. But when that thinking starts spreading across the whole group, they unify and bring to it in a new way. I mean, the example I think of is one year when I was at the Early Childhood Center teaching pre-K kindergarten. And it was soon after Christmas one year when a big film came out for children on penguins. Everybody came back after vacation talking about penguins and that movie. And we had a hill outside in the yard that everybody would slide on with the sleds. But one day soon after this, it was way too icy to use the sleds. So they just started sliding down on their bellies and their snowsuits. Kids who had never played together before, who've never spent time together in the classroom, all of a sudden they were totally unified in this pursuit of sliding down, and they talked about penguins. They're floating down like penguins. And so that got us into a whole little study of penguins and making something together that was a penguin environment in our water sensory table, making little penguins. And so, as kids talk in the circle about things, they get this unified, the thinking grows because the group is talking about it. And there's kids sometimes who, if I'm like trying to answer somebody's question or explain something, and I'm just not talking the language of the children, another kid will say, "This is what you mean."
So helpful. Yeah, I love what you're describing because, we all know that negative emotions are contagious. And I think teachers can live in fear of that, right? One negative kid is going to turn the entire class against them. But positive emotions are contagious as well. And to think about setting up the conditions in the classroom where positive emotions dominate, where they reign, because it's intrinsic to the activity, which is what, again, early childhood just takes for granted. Of course, you're going to set up conditions under which kids can be positive and infect each other with that.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that there won't be negative things, of course.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I love it. Okay, so I wanted you to talk a little bit about care in education. And you mentioned to me a book called Illuminating Care. And there's a concept inside that book called professional love. I ordered the book. I haven't received it yet, so I haven't read it. But I'm really interested in these two ideas, care, professional love in education. at all levels, and how most teachers probably who are above pre-K, all the way to grad school would abhor the notion, would shrink at the idea that care and professional love are things they should aspire to. In fact, when I was doing my dissertation, this was 30 years ago or more, I was interested in teachers' emotions and how they knew, how emotions were a way of knowing, basically. And I had a very famous advisor who was a psychologist. He said, "You people are going to drag me kicking and screaming into this realm of care in education." So talk to me about it.
Well, of course, in early childhood, there is actual caretaking of children. And the team of teachers in a classroom is engaged in that together, and they're responsible for different things. And this is actually a new framework that Carol Gabbard and Murray has brought to the field. And they're talking about it everywhere. She's like the hot item. So that's been really exciting. When I was a director and I would interview teachers, I would talk to them about, why are you interested in doing this work? Well, I just love children. They're so fun. They're so cute. I just love them. And I was like,
So do I, but
tell me more about what that means to you and how you would respond to it and how you would be with children in this loving way. So I was trying to get at this love for them. So Carol talks about, children do deserve to be loved. And that in all this caretaking, I mean, you can imagine changing the 50th diaper in a day, that care can get kind of uncaring.
Yeah.
So how do you change it? Children deserve to be loved, no matter what their age is, no matter how old the students are. They deserve loving, present, caring interactions. Carol got the term from Jules Page in the UK about thinking the term we can use for this is professional love. And when parents come to the center and they tour the center, their questions kind of skirt around, not quite spoken, is, will you love my child?
Yes.
And will my child be seen for whom she or he is? I think that when we think about professional love, we're talking about deep respect for the children and deep caring and loving interactions and loving presence. And really, it skirts outward to being that way with your team members. So you're trying to do all of this care, you're trying to develop emergent curriculum projects. And so it's not just the children who come into conflicts, it's also the teachers. And so how can you be loving and present and accepting and learning about your teammates as well? It's big, and it shows that a child, they're in a caring environment and they know that they are being attended to in a very present way, and it frees them.
Yeah.
I can see why people who are teaching older children or students, where are the boundaries of this? Where did my own family, was not loving? How do I learn how to do this? How can I make sure that there's boundaries around this, but still there?
Yes. I love it that you mentioned the word boundaries because, when we talk about professional love, I don't know how Carol talks about it, but I think there are lots of ways to care. There are lots of ways to demonstrate care and love that read as caring and loving, even if they don't seem like traditional care and love, right? You don't have to be gushing all the time. You don't have to be, speaking in a lilting kindergarten teacher voice. You can be very firm, right? Right? Be human. And I talk to teachers a lot about the importance of boundaries and the importance of asserting their own. I talk about gardens, getting in their own gardens.
Right.
Yeah. And staying out of everybody else's garden. Their gardens are not your garden unless they invite you in, and then get out when it's appropriate. But Boundaries are what allow us, I think, to be truly caring and loving. Because if we're seeping over into other people's gardens and doing the work for them or feeling for them or enabling their incompetence, by being the most competent person, that's not caring. It might seem like it's caring. Like if you are doing the work for the kid, that's not caring. That's actually teaching the kid that he's incompetent and could be raising all kinds of frustration that he will then act out. And then, now he's starting to develop a reputation. Caring, I think, and loving really do require boundaries so that what is felt in the other garden, the garden of the person you care for or love, is appropriate. They know it's appropriate. It's reality-based, right? Like, I'm not going to give you all kinds of lovies because you just poked someone with a sharp pencil. I'm going to respond appropriately. That's caring. That's loving. I expect you to be a good human being, and I'm going to teach you how if you erred in this moment.
Yeah.
So I don't know how Carol talks about it, but I think for people to cringe at the thought of care or love in a professional setting, but especially in an education setting, it's wrong because anyone who's a developmental partner to another human being has got to care for them, has got to love them at some level. Love meaning, as you say, being willing to be present to them, being curious about what's going on inside them, being capable of making predictions or making guesses, and really wanting to know, authentically wanting to connect.
What I want to say, and I think what Carol has talked about with this, when a child feels that presence, attention and that care and good vibes. I mean, this isn't like, you're so young. Oh, you're just the sweetest. Even though sometimes you might, do for a little child, but it opens them to relax and diminish whatever stress they're feeling, because it's stressful to go to school all day long and get rushed out the door in the morning and rushed home at night. So if a child or a student can relax more because they feel more accepted, and this can be from the most difficult person in the classroom to the least known person in the classroom, if they can start to feel this loving presence and commitment to them, it opens their own sense of self so that they can come forward more bravely and see each other. Oh, that kid who was always the biggest pain in the neck in my last class? I'm seeing something different in that person because this teacher is responding to that person differently. And it just opens up that whole circle.
That's love it. Yeah. I mean, it's the ideal modeling. It's not just that I'm seeing a teacher responding to that kid this way. It's that this teacher is responding to me this way.
Yeah.
If I'm being treated generously, I can turn around and be generous, right? If I'm being seen accurately, I can see accurately. If someone can feel empathy for me, I can feel empathy. This is like crucial learning. I mean, anyone that you meet that is not empathetic is probably someone who did not experience empathy. It's weird how it's, as long as we feel it from someone out there, a caregiver, we can develop those skills ourselves. It's wild. And again, as long as you're a teacher whose job is to help students grow and learn and develop, then these skills that you're describing are crucial.
And crucial right on through.
Yeah. All the way through. Exactly.
Yeah.
Through graduate school, through life.
Yeah.
So I think we've kind of been getting at this, that these tenets that you so clearly make the case for their role in early childhood education. What can you say about these tenets, or children first, the importance of play, the importance of being fully embodied, to recognize that human beings are in bodies, they're not just in brains, and that learning is fully embodied. It's not just brain-based or cognitive, right? That it's relational as well, that relationships are crucial, that sensory knowing is important, presence, narration, mentalizing, all these skills that we've been talking about. How are they relevant elsewhere?
I mean, we all know, and the teachers listening to this all know, it's very demanding to do what it is that is asked of us to teach a curriculum and to deal with any number of children who are having their own lives and their own needs and so forth. But I think that it's giving yourself the opportunity to just change it, just to be aware of your response to students. How can you look at even one student a week in a different way? And it often happens that when you're asked to really rethink a relationship with a kid and see that kid differently, that you go toward a person who's got the most learning issues or the most behavior issues or whatever. So that person is occupying a lot of your headspace. And so giving yourself the opportunity to like flick a little switch for yourself of how can I see this person differently?
I love it.
How can I really observe how that person is in his or her body, or facial expressions, or use of tone, or language that they're typically using? Where can you not just see things that are problematic, but what else? Who is that person as a thinker? What does that person want to know? So I think that those are really crucial as we carry up all of this conversation. I mean, there's so much required of teachers that's time bound and standard bound. I mean, we have sometimes paras in the classroom, and paras also need to really think about these new ways to look at things. But what it is that you have to do, where's the little kernel that you can just change a little bit to be more according to your group's interest? How are they talking? How are they having conversations? How are you bringing more thinking? One of the things I learned about, or somebody said, was students are not empty vessels to like pour learning into. They got to learn this in order to be successful out and well. But what's in that vessel?
Yes, exactly.
To bring out. And so conversations in the classroom, think about how you can use conversations to go from teaching something to helping children and students as thinkers.
You're making me think so many things. One of them is the way I like to talk about what you're describing is that students are always teaching us about themselves, who they are, how they're feeling, what's going on inside them. They're teaching us. They're giving us data and really what they expect from the world, right? And I love you're saying that if we can stop and observe, if we can choose one kid to observe, just to be asking oneself the question every day, okay, how is this kid? What is this kid teaching me about himself or herself this week? I'll give it 5 days. I'll give it 2 days. I'll give it 3 days. And I will just write some stuff down. And based on what I observe, I can start making some guesses about what might be going on inside this kid, right?
Yeah.
And you can do that with any number of kids. Again, you can just do it for a day and start compiling data about especially the most difficult kids that you're drawn to either hate or perseverate on, right? I'm going to worry about this kid, or draw conclusions based on surface things like behaviors, facial expressions, or tones of voice. But noticing those things and collecting them as data, you're brilliantly suggesting, can lead to a change. Not a change in the kid, the change in you, your attitude towards the kid, and then the change in you will promote a change in the kid, right?
Yeah. We used to call it the magic of description at the Prospect Center.
Love it.
When you took the opportunity to really do an in-depth description of a child,
yes,
it would change just doing that, change the orientation to the person.
Yes. We do that in teacher support groups. And often I help teachers just what I call get to compassion. If we can come up with some guesses about what's going on inside a child who is behaving abominably, if we can just come up with a guess as to why they might be doing it, right or wrong, if we can get to compassion and walk into the classroom tomorrow with compassion in our bodies, not hatred or fear or critique, then things change. It is amazing. It is magic.
And your own stress level changes. I mean, it's not just the kid
Exactly.
who changes. It's your heart rhythm and your inability to sleep and your tight muscles and you're quick to anger and all of that. And you're just like, I've had enough of this teaching.
I've had enough of this kid. Exactly. It's stressful for kids to be in school. It's stressful for teachers to be in school. And a teacher, the only stress they can manage is their own. But what you're suggesting is if I can do the work and calm myself, that itself is possibly enough to go into a classroom and remain calm. And then to have tactics or skills or attitudes or precepts or tenets that help you manage the moment-to-moment tests and challenges. Another thought I had as you were talking was a notion of relationship with content, that our jobs are to know our students, to know what it is they want to know what they know, which is something that honestly, with a lot of college professors and even, other teachers, have you asked them what they think about the topic of your lecture or the topic of your class? Have you asked them what they know? The KWL charts? What you know, what you want to know, what you've learned. Very basic. Again, sorry, that's early childhood. That's early elementary, right? It works at the college level. I mean, I've seen professors go like, oh my God, what a great idea, right? But it's because it's based, it's emergent from the notion that really we need to know what's going on in our kids. We need to be student-centered.
Yeah. I've been thinking about how do you get at emergent curriculum in older people when there's, this course teaches you about, or this standard and this task need to be made. But if you can find one time a semester to say to students, what would you really like to know about? It's not like, what do you want to know about the 1800s or so, because you've been studying the 1800s, but just generally in a sort of, if you're in history, what time period are you curious about? Talk to me about where you're going to start thinking about this, and then follow your nose. And kids are on phones. They have research tools all the time. They can follow their nose anywhere they want to go. And it doesn't have to be like a cohesive report of what they came to, but just some piece of writing that says, I went here and oh my God, then I looked there and it led me over here. And God, I want to know more about that.
I love that. I am a writing teacher. I used to teach writing. I love the idea of using that approach to get students to think about evidence to support a claim, to kind of somehow get them into the rabbit hole. Like, what do you want to know about? Let's get you into that rabbit hole. YouTube, wherever you go. And then write down every step that you take. You wonder how you got there. And then how legitimate is the place that you end up? Like, be conscious of yourself, right? It's interesting. I also feel like I say a lot to teachers that students' behavior, especially in difficult classes, difficult students, if you pay attention to their behaviors and wonder what they're teaching you about, what it's like for them to be in your class, for example, what it's like for them to be in this math class or this particular ELA class, if you stop and wonder with that student or with the class, especially if the whole class starts to act out, like if a class has been obnoxious to a substitute, or if a class has completely fallen down on their responsibilities and somehow they can't buckle down and they normally buckle down, to just stop and wonder with them. Yeah. Again, to kind of detach, get in your garden, and then start asking some questions or making some observations with them right there and in their presence. Here's what I'm seeing. I'm so curious about what I'm seeing because it's unusual. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling tense here with you. Yeah. What's going on inside you guys? What am I missing? What's your experience here now? Those kinds of questions. I think most kids, if you don't have a relationship with the kids, they're going to probably just lob shit over your garden wall to explode your Molotov cocktails, as it were. But if you have any version of a relationship with them and they believe that you are asking authentic questions, not gotcha questions, they will probably come through with some, we feel like this is really boring, or, we already know this, or whatever, right? But be curious. I mean, I totally appreciate the pressure that you mentioned at the very beginning of your answer. as a teacher in whatever, elementary school up, I have got to cover curriculum. I've got to cover it, and I've got to get my students to get good test scores. Okay, if you feel that pressure, it doesn't mean that you have to go, solely follow the kids where they want to go, but you can do a keto with them. That is, notice that they're teaching you something right here and now about what they can and cannot do, or what they're getting and not getting. Yeah. Go with it. Ask them. Make that a regular practice.
Yes.
Collaborate with them. They know shit. Find out what they know.
Exactly. My daughter teaches in Boston public schools in the junior level, and she's also trained in restorative practice. So she uses in her class quite often. And that kind of practice, sitting in a classroom is arranged in rows or whatever, somehow circle up.
Yep. Circle up. Yep. Look at each other. Okay, so Sarah, for teachers who might be thinking, yeah, sure, all these things are important. I get it. I mean, in a perfect world, but not in my classroom, impossible. What would you say to people who are listening to us talk about these tenets and our kind of pie in the sky thoughts about the teacher-student relationship and the student-content relationship? What kernels or tools would you say they could bring, any teacher listening now could bring tomorrow to their class to try to put some of these into practice?
I mean, we've really been talking about it, and it's a bite size. Remember, it's a bite. Because you feel so much of this pressure, it can let you know, like, if you go in and decide this is the student that I'm going to observe, and this is how I'm going to observe, and next week I'm going to choose that kid over there to take a deeper look at. It would be great to be able to give an opportunity in an elementary classroom, for instance, to have more open-ended materials, not while you're at the reading table so that you can't watch, but so that you can come and see what they're doing over time. Does that lead to a group project, a hands-on something that through which you can study the pieces that you're supposed to be studying? Like I said, giving them opportunities to follow their noses and to learn how you're asking questions so that you can get real, authentic conversations going where kids are listening to each other and interested about the things that you might be studying in general, but you're changing the framework of your discussions with the students.
It's like what you want is for at least one student to say, this is what she means, right? And then you learn from that so that you don't really need that translation anymore. But it's probably always going to be happening. But you want a classroom where kids are going to be like, yeah, you guys, I love it. She's, okay, we love her, but she's old. This is what she means. She needs us. I love that. It gives so much authority to the kids, and they certainly have it. They have the authority. They are authoritative human beings. And for teachers to give them a chance to express that, I love it. Without giving up the responsibility of being the adult in charge of that, what I call holding environment. The kids are not in charge. If they feel like they're in charge, they'll act out because they know they're unsafe. It's weird.
Yeah. I think the other takeaway for people is to there's always this self-care talk, and who the heck has time for self-care? Momentary self-care. Notice when your heart is beating too fast, when you're like, I've got this to do, I've got that to do. Just give yourself more moments to recognize that you're not there to teach the curriculum. You are there to be with these people and to support the amazing thinkers that they are, and that they have buckets to offer and to go forward and learn that they're curious about.
Yeah, I love it. Another way of putting it is figuring out how to get present again. When you're distracted by your thoughts or your fears, it's almost like getting meditative in the heat of the moment. That's not easy. But I love that if you're thinking about all your own pressures, now it becomes a teacher-centered classroom. And you've forgotten the kids. And guess what? They'll know. They'll know that you've forgotten them. Oh, Sarah, it is a big job. It's a big job, and it's getting harder because kids are getting unweller, I gather. And I don't blame them. There are good reasons for that. So whatever support teachers can get, I love the idea of getting in groups and taking deep dives into individual students that you all know, or taking deep dives into an artifact of a student that you don't necessarily have to know, but the artifact you can. And again, I just want to make a plug for teacher support groups. That's what we do in teacher support groups is we take deep dives. They last an hour and a quarter. They're not that long. And by taking deep dives into kids or colleagues or other people who are difficult or parents, you can really get some good work done in figuring out what it might be going on in there, for what good reasons. And again, getting the compassion matters, but if you can come up with a plan of action based on a really solid data-based formulation of what's going on inside a person psychically, you can turn an enemy into a fan, just like that.
Yeah, and it puts you back into the reason you became a teacher.
Love it.
And it relieves all these pressures that you're talking about. And more and more people are leaving the field.
Yes.
And they're so valuable.
Yes. Yes. Super, super important. Our kids are important, and our teachers as a front line of developmental support and love and care. It's so, so important. More important now than ever.
Yeah.
So thank you, teachers, those of you who are listening. And thank you, Sarah. You are awesome.
So are you. I love talking.
I just love talking to you. And maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Thanks, Betsy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. I want to thank the teacher whose story we just told or who consented to be interviewed for their generosity and wisdom and commitment to teaching greatly. You rock. Here are a few more people who rock. Joe, of course, my super fun and thoughtful co-host. My endlessly patient and talented creative partner and strategist, Julian Andrukaya. My brother, Tom Burris, whose song Lifetime, from his amazing album Jabbering Trout, check it out, ushers us into and out of teaching through emotions. My astute script editor and creative genius, Brad Wells. And my son, Wilder, artist extraordinaire, who is constantly blowing me away with his effortless talent. Thank you, one and all. Run to the Teaching Through Emotions Substack right now to find all my writing, my podcast, newsletter, and more. That's teachingthroughemotions.substack.com. Subscribe. Get my stuff in your inbox automatically. If you are a teacher with a story, I'd love to hear it. You can contact me directly and confidentially on my Substack. Again, go to teachingthroughemotions.substack.com and click on Share a Story. And check out the show notes below for how to access my resources. I mean it. Suffering in silence gets you nowhere. Telling your story is the first step towards understanding and relief. Contact me. Chew through and pop those terrible teaching emotions. You will feel better.
It's all true. It's all verified. It's amazing.